there, this is Jennifer. Welcome to Crafting in Carrollville. If this is your first time joining us, I'm so glad you're here. If you're a subscriber, thanks for watching. These are just some of the materials we're going to be upcycling in today's video. And believe it or not, I get to almost all of those. Some of them I replace with other things, but for the most part, all of those are going to be upcycled in this video. I'm starting with this magazine rack. And this was one of those like press board things that you should never work with, but I didn't catch that in time, so I'm working with it. The first thing I'm going to do is square up those side pieces so that they look more like cutting boards and that they are straight and squared up. I'm using my paint pen so that I have plenty of contrast when I take these outside to cut with my jigsaw. This is the second time I've been fooled by this pressed board. It's like a mixture of sawdust and glue, and it's the most awful stuff to work with. Like, I don't know why they ever built things out of this. I guess it's one of the original trash to treasure projects, I really think. Anyway, so you see me again marking both of those with my white paint pen there. And the only thing about using a wide paint pen like this is you really do have to decide if you're going to cut on the inside or the outside of that line, because you want both of your projects to match up, both of your sides to match up. Now I'm building the sides of my box. You can see by my thumbnail that I'm building an industrial tote. I've seen these all over Pinterest and I love them, so I'm building my own. I'm using these little slat boards that I picked up at Home Depot. They were free in their bin that they have at the back of the store. This is some packing material that they just throw away. Anyway, so I've used this hardware cloth and these little slats to make the sides of my tote, stapling them together with my stapler there. I'm going to do both sides exactly the same way. We had this hardware cloth on hand. My husband used this hardware cloth all around the fencing on our property to make a skirt so that our dog can't tunnel under the fence. So it was already cut to this perfect height. All I needed to do was add these slats. You can see I missed with my staple gun a couple times, so I just pull those staples out with my needle nose pliers. Go right back at it. When I have both of those sides finished, I'm going to use my brad nailer to nail those to the sides of my squared up pieces that I made. And you can see what that particle board looks like. I hate that stuff. So if you see something made with that, don't use it. Don't try to upcycle it. Just throw it away. I would have done that if I had known that that's what this was, but you know, I didn't catch it in time. So I'm using them because, again, we are still upcycling through my stash of stuff from the Goodwill Bins. Working on that in every video for the last 12 or 13 videos. Now I have my box built for the most part. I just have to add a bottom. It's nice and sturdy. It's in fact, it's very sturdy. I love this particular look. I saw these all over Pinterest and I thought it would be so fun to make. So it's much easier to cut the bottom of your piece after you have it all constructed, because then you know exactly how big it needs to be. I just used some hardboard again that I picked up. This was a cut-off piece that I used in another project. So everything I'm using was already in my stash. Then I needed a way to cover those staples up on the inside. That was just way too messy a look. So I'm using this yardstick that I cut down, and my little brad nails. I don't have any short brad nails on hand, so I'm just using little finish nails that I had in my stash to fasten that yardstick to those slats. And again, this is just another way of adding to that industrial look that I'm going for. Everything from, you know, the actual obvious that it's a ruler, including the black lettering. I love that. So I love everything about this project. I think it just comes out so nice in the end. And I'm not a super like industrial farmhouse kind of girl, But, you know, I live with a man, so I have a husband, and, you know, we don't need all frilly and girly things in our house. I'm using the same handle, the spindle handle that was already on the magazine rack. I've just shortened it a little bit because my box is a little bit shorter than the magazine rack was. And that worked out well because I can use the exact same hardware to put it back together. And the little tiny nubs that I cut off the spindle to make it short enough to fit in there, I can use as the end pieces to screw in there. And you're going to see that. There's my first one that I've screwed in. And I'm going to come back with a sander and sand those till they're kind of rounded. And you'll see me do that. Right now I'm making this particular screw short enough so that it will actually... the little nub that I'm going to put on will actually cover the screw. So that takes some elbow grease because I have to screw it in there pretty far. But I love the way that worked out. The little knobs that I took off of the magazine rack to begin with were just a little too cutesy for industrial farmhouse look. So now I'm coming in. I never sand in my workshop, but I'm sanding in my workshop to show you that I've sanded all the finish off of that handle, and I've also sanded those little nubs down to a more round industrial shape, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to come in, I'm going to paint this with matte black chalk paint. And you can see also that I have filled in some spots I didn't like with wood putty. Again, that stuff is so fragile and just hard to work with that I wanted to reinforce some cracks and things with wood putty, so that's what I did. Now I'm coming in and I'm just using antique wax to stain that bare wood, both on the side pieces and the handle. I love the combination of the antiquing wax and the black. I think it's, you know, just super classy and industrial, just everything I wanted this piece to be. And now I'm just going to add a number 1 and a number 2. I'm going to show you that. These are rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree of all places. And that's as much as I'm going to embellish this piece. Super cute, super simple. I love the way that turned out. And now I'm using this paper. This is a photograph that I took at a farm a few weeks ago. I've turned it into what looks like an oil painting, and I've printed it out on rice paper, and now I'm going to put it on this box that I showed you in the beginning of my video. I've painted it since then, and I've painted it this light color, but things are going to take a seriously dark turn here pretty soon. I decide that I love the image on this box, but I want to make it more dark and moody, something that will go with that industrial look, because believe it or not, men buy artwork. And I make a dark and moody version of this in this video, and then I make also a light and airy version of this same decoupage paper. This decoupage paper is going to be available to purchase in a few weeks. I have to design it, order it, and then work with it myself before I'm going to sell it. But if you are interested in some original decoupage paper featuring my original artwork, then let me know. That's coming up really soon. Like I said, I order it from Zazzle, but I have to design it and then order it, and that takes a couple weeks. And then I want to work with it before I sell it, because I want to make sure it is exactly what I want it to be. Now you're going to see this is going to take a dark and moody turn, just like you saw in my thumbnail. I have painted it with this suede textured paint to make it look like a leather box, and now I'm just going over those edges with black wax and blending it in so that it looks like it's sort of burnt on the edges. I want it to look like a burnished leather material. Don't worry, I know I just flashed you the unpainted bottom or the white painted bottom, but I do come in with the same treatment and do the bottom of the box naturally. The inside of the box is already finished, and this would be a great box to hold art supplies. Pencils fit in it perfectly, things like that. Now we've moved on to the light and airy version of this decoupage paper. I have previously painted this box and added the feet. I bought the feet on Amazon, and again, I took my image The original photograph that I took of Waffles and Ginger, those are the cows featured in this decoupage paper. I know them personally. I added these sunflowers in my word processing program, and it took me maybe 5 minutes to create this particular set of images. Now I'm going to decoupage this onto my box. I've printed on rice paper. I've finished it with a matte sealer, and now I'm just using Mod Podge, as you see, to decoupage it down to my box. I'm using a light thin coat. I'm making sure there's no big streaks or globs of Mod Podge. And then I'm just gonna make sure that it's down there well without any bubbles or wrinkles. Gonna keep working at that. This one I'm going to keep light and airy. I wanted to show you how you can use the same image to create two separate looks. And I think that's important because it really opens your opportunities as far as buyers go. Like, I don't really see a man buying this for his office or whatever, but the first box I definitely could see a man picking that up and loving it. I'm just using a cutoff from the same piece of paper I printed out to add some graphics to the front of this box. I'm going to decoupage that on the same way. I'm just going to work around that lock by, or that closure, whatever it is, by decoupaging right up to it, and then I'll come back in later and trim that back. If you haven't used rice paper before, it is such a great product. There's a couple things I love about it. I love the texture in it. I love the fibers that you can find in it. I think it just adds such a natural look and feel to your decoupage. And it also, it comes in 8.5 by 11 sheets, which I find terribly convenient after working with just regular full-size tissue paper, you know, that I picked up at Dollar Tree or whatever for the longest time. Now I'm going to distress those edges. I'm doing two things here. Obviously, if there's any excess decoupage paper, I'm sanding that off, and then I'm also distressing the edges of that box. I want this to look old and rustic. I think cows and sunflowers, and they just lend themselves well to a more rustic feel. I hadn't intended to distress this box at all. I painted it really well and I was going to leave it intact. But I don't know about y'all, but when I came out here to upcycle these boxes, I really thought about the next one as I was working on the first one. I really hadn't formulated any type of plan. I didn't know what graphics I was going to use. This just all came together as I was working on one project. I would think about what I would do with the next one. And I tried to get to all of them. There are a couple that I didn't include that were in the opening of my video, but for the most part, I think I completed just about every one of them. If I didn't complete a particular box, I replaced it with another. So this was a very busy week in my workshop, and you can see the digression. I started out with a super clean workspace and it just falls apart. So and I don't like that, but you know what? I don't clean up the mess until I've done making a mess. So that's what happened here. Now I'm using an X-Acto blade to cut around that closure. That little cigar box there is where I've kept my utility knives and all my extra blades for years and years. I've had those things, and I didn't paint them and add the crockery stamp for quite a few years, but they've been around for a long time. I tend to keep things like that are functional. I love the way these projects turned out. Now to take away that brassy look and make it look, you know, much more warm and in keeping with the tone of this project, I'm adding some gold rub and buff. It's the antique gold, and you can see that just warms the whole project right up. So I add that to the closure and also to the hinges and to the feet. I had painted the feet originally because I didn't know which direction I was going to go, but I do know that if you paint your metal hardware first, it receives the rub and buff much easier. You don't have to go nearly as thick or as many coats as you do if you just rub and buff on the plain metal. I love the way this project turned out. I do tend to gravitate more towards the light and airy things, but sometimes it's nice just to have something that's a little dark and moody. There's this guy at Vintage Market Days that's there every time I am, and his whole booth is just this dark and moody vibe, and I love it. I just, it's so cozy to me, but I wouldn't want my whole house to be that way, but I love that vibe. I always use a small stiff brush to apply rub and buff this way if I want it to be, you know, super what's the word? Anyway, what you saw me do there was just add some clear wax to my box. Now I've got this little tiny box. I painted it, I added the stripes, all the stuff. Now I'm just adding one of those transfers that I've had on hand. You can see it took me a whole lot of time to figure out which transfer I wanted to use. I had all these choices, but I just added this little one. It's just a cheap transfer from Amazon. I don't recommend them. You saw in my last video. Anyway, so I do want you to know that this, even though it's shiny right now, that's the number one thing I hate about these transfers, is they're shiny. But I take it out in my yard and I spray it with some matte clear sealer, so it's super matte when it's all said and done. And you'll see that in my reveal photos at the end of this video. Anyway, if you want to see how I did the stripes, don't worry, it's coming up. I'm going to do another one with stripes. So you'll see me do that. I'm just adding a tiny little graphic to the front. Just something super small and subtle. And that's it. This little project was super cute. Oh, I do add feet to this as well. And if you'll notice, the feet are actually a part of the original magazine rack that I took apart. So nothing went to waste on that magazine rack. I am going to use the side pieces, or the front and back pieces, the actual caning that I took off of that magazine rack in another project coming up. Now here we go. I'm adding these feet. I'm just using Fix-All glue to add those feet, and then I'm going to paint them the same color as the box. The colors that I'm using in this video, the light colors like this one here, and then the silvery white that I use in the other boxes, are paints that I had bought at Home Depot. They were Oops paint, and if they're the right type of paint, if they're you know, just regular flat house paint or whatever, I add some calcium carbonate, and that makes a great chalk paint, gives it that perfect matte finish with chalky texture that we love. This is the same paint that I had painted that box with. It's sort of a sandy beige color. I love it because it doesn't throw any yellow to me. It's just very creamy. This is a box that came with a bunch of grass in it. Like, it had just a ton of that grass, like let me see. Let me think about what it's called. I'll remember. But anyway, it was grass, and it had some Easter eggs type stuff in it, and some foam, like that kind of obnoxious foam that gets all staticky, and you have to like pull it out of your clothes forever. Anyway, I'm adding a drawer front to this because I'm going to make this into like a little sewing machine drawer. And you see I've added a ton of wood glue. I did not need that much wood glue, but I add a little, you can see the little slat on my table there. That's a 4.5 square wood slat from the Dollar Tree. I think they come 5 or 6 in a pack, something like that. So I've glued that to the front of my drawer, and I've filled in the cracks with some spackle because I want things to look like, I want it to look like it was a drawer. And then I've added these little legs because I think they look like thread spools almost. So I do have some thread spools, but I didn't want to use them on this. And then I'm going to show you how I make my stripes like I did on my last box. I've just taped it off with masking tape, and in between each stripe I've placed another piece of masking tape, and then just alternated all the way down the side of that box until I have them evenly spaced. This is a color called Sage Shadow. It's by Folk Art. I'm almost to the end of my jar there, so I'm gonna have to work on getting some more of that mixed up at Home Depot, and then I'll add the calcium carbonate to have chalk paint. I'm using my heat gun a lot in this video because this was very labor intensive, this particular video, and it kept me busy. You can see my first stripe there is not perfect. I come back and fix that. And we're not necessarily going for perfection, but we're not going for messy and not well done either. So I do fix that. My heat gun got a good workout in this particular week because, like I said, these were some labor-intensive projects, but I really enjoyed them. I really loved the outcome, and I am determined to upcycle through my stash of stuff. I'm tired of it. I have taken, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to show you. I have one of those little labels, plaques. I think that's what they're called. They're not from IOD. The molds are from Amazon, but they're basically, I think, IOD calls them apothecary labels. Anyway, I'm going to use one of those on the drawer front here as soon as I get to it. Right now I'm just seeing how things are going to work out with my knob. I bought this hardware at Hobby Lobby. It was on clearance for $1.25, and now I'm taking my, we'll call it an apothecary label, and I've painted it that Sage Shadow green. I'm gluing it to the front of my drawer, and then I'm going to tape it down and let it set. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to come back when it's dry. And you're going to see, I love to show you things like this because I think you know it and maybe you don't. But, well, first I'm going to paint the second side. So if you wanted to see how I arrange those stripes, that's how I do it. I lay down tape and I lay it down alternating stripes so I get them spaced evenly, and then I lift the tape that's not supposed to be there and just keep laying it down until I have everything taped off evenly. This look, these stripes, I feel like it's very cliche, like, you know, you kind of see it everywhere, but it's so French country and it's so shabby chic and it's just so pretty. So I have always loved that look my whole life. I've just been so drawn to that. And these particular colors too, like, you know, these were like the original shabby chic colors, I think, like the super light mint green and the pinks and the mauves and whatever. So really loving this look. I think it's so pretty. So there I go. I have that all taped off. Now I'm just going to paint those stripes in. I press the tape down really firmly because, believe it or not, this is better wood than the magazine rack was. This is real wood, but it's really ridgy, like it's not really smooth at all. So I'm just pressing that tape down really firmly to make sure that my paint doesn't seep into those ridges any more than it's already going to. But like I said, it's not, you know, it's not about perfection. I could sand it off and make it look even more distressed if that's what I was going to do. So you can see, I can't see where I put my tape, so I'm just painting everywhere. Like, oh my goodness. I have to explain myself all the time to people. Actually, I don't even bother anymore. People can find out that I can't see, you know, like, just, they'll learn the ugly truth by themselves. But you can see, I'm just, I'm painting everywhere. Don't know why I put tape down at all. But I laugh at myself. That's how I get through a day. Anyway, I'm going to do a big reveal and pull the paint off, and I know it's so satisfying. So that's like your ASMR moment for the day, is you get to see perfectly painted stripes on the side of a box. So heat gun again. Now, oh, I've already Well, you didn't get to see me. Sorry, you were cheated of your ASMR moment. All right, now I'm going to drill right through that mold. You see how that happened? Isn't that the coolest thing? Like, you can drill through your resin molds. I hope you knew that. I'm going to screw that knob in. Now we're going to come back and embellish this sweet little sewing machine drawer that we've created. I do have real sewing machine drawers, but they're in use. I'm using them. I use them at my shows to display certain things, so they're not available for upcycling. Sorry. Okay, here's my Saint Germain transfer book. Just ordered this from IOD. Super excited about their new release. There's always something in the new release that I can't resist. This was one of them. The chandelier mold was one of my super favorites. The Home Sweet Home transfer, and then the music sheet stamps. So those were the 4 things I had to have this time. Here I am. I'm giving you a good look at all the pages, so if you had any curiosity that hasn't been satisfied about this particular transfer book, here are all the pages. I'm going to go through all of them for you, and here I am cutting off the one that I want for that side. Now, y'all know I'm a realist, so this is how it's going to come together. I'm going to put these down. We'll talk about this as we go. And I'm cutting off all these little pieces because whatever pieces I cut off, I'm coming back for. I never let any bits of my transfer go to waste. Even if I just have to use something to color correct or, fill in a spot that I accidentally lifted up because, I can't see nothing, whatever. So, anyway, you know how we do transfers. We just keep rubbing until the paper lifts without lifting the image. So that's what we're doing. And I like this transfer tool. It came with one of the cheap things from Amazon, but I like it because you can also use it to burnish your vinyl. And I always need things like that on hand. So then you give it a good rub and it kind of does like a heat set. Now I'm going to pour these birds. I love these IOD birds. This is the first time I've used them. I know they look used, but my sister used them when she was here, but I've never actually used these. So here I am. It's just you know what it is with the quick cast resin. It's 2 parts of equal proportion of A and B. You mix it for 30 seconds and then pour, and it sets up so fast. Oh my goodness. I've poured 2 birds for one side of my box and another bird for the other side. Now listen, this is important to me. I told you I'm a realist. You see how these birds are flying? They're in flight, so it's okay with me if they're not resting on a branch. Like, that's fine. But the next side is going to have a bird that's resting on a branch, so there obviously must be a branch under him. So this is the way my brain works all day long. Like, I have to make sure that even if it's not my art, it has to be believable. Like, there has to be an element of truth in it for me. That's just the way I am. I'm using my Gorilla Wood glue to stick my molds to my piece here. Doesn't take long for that wood glue to set up. Just a few minutes, 10 or so minutes, and you're ready to go again. And it doesn't dry clear. It dries a little bit yellow, so you got to make sure that, you get it off your surface before it dries. Now you're going to see me come in with some more of that paint that I painted the box originally. I'm going to paint those birds. Like I said, if you want to make your own chalk paint, I found that calcium carbonate is the very best additive to do that. It gives you a super matte finish, and it's just that same texture that chalk paint has. So that's how I turn paint into chalk paint if I need it to be chalky. I love the way this project turns out. It's so classic shabby chic for me. It's got all the right stuff, all the right elements. The reason I'm painting these birds is that I'm going to come back in with some iridescent paint that will match that knob, that hardware that I put on the front of my drawer. But in order for it to show up and be iridescent, I need an undercoat first. It's like when you paint your nails, your fingernails glittery, you have to have a base coat first so that the glitter will show. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just the rule. So I'm adding that chalk paint first. And I must be doing some touch up. I thought I had all these places edited out where I'm not showing you what I'm doing, but I'll never get it all right. Just trust me. You'll always know it's a Jennifer video because there will always be mistakes made. I hope that's okay with everybody. And you know what? Listen, seriously, look at all the mess on my table. I'm pointing it out because I never sand on my table for this reason. But I wanted to show you that you know what sanding will do on that tote. Anyway, my heat gun again. Now I'm going to come in with that iridescent paint. This paint is called White Flash. It's a color shift paint from Folk Art. I love this paint. It does something that no other product that I'm aware of does in this way. It's just such a beautiful look. It has like a pearlescent finish, just like that hardware that I bought from Hobby Lobby. And actually, I'm surprised that the camera's picking it up as well as it is. I'm just super in love with that product. And it comes in all sorts of different colors. I'm going to do the second side of this box the very same way. I'm not going to use, there was no like option to use that same transfer. This was a different variety of the same flower. And I've just cut it in half so that it's coming in from both edges, so it's the opposite of what was happening on the other side. On the other side, the flowers were in the, the bulk of the flowers was in the middle of the piece, and the birds were on the outside, and now the flowers are going to be on the outside and the bird's going to be on the inside. And notice the bird is resting, so there's a branch under him. So I don't know about y'all, but that kind of stuff's super important to me. In fact, maybe I'm a little OCD about it. But I promise you, crafting and things like that, that's the only thing I'm OCD about. Like, there's nothing else. I'm just not. So same thing, we're just using that transfer tool to rub all that transfer down, lifting it periodically to see how far we've come. There we go. I just love the softness of that. I think it's so pretty. Definitely one of my favorite things I've made in this video. I specify in this video because there's always going to be things that you love. Like, if you love what you do, there's always going to be things you love. And it's super important that you love what you do. This is the very last project we're going to be working on in this video. This is a pencil box that I have had lying around for ages. I use it to store my drawing pencils, my erasers, my blending stumps, all that kind of stuff. So I am decorating it with pencil sketches. These are not my own artwork by any means. I do produce original artwork, and I love that, but this is graphics that I found on Creative Fabrica. Mod Podging them down, printed them out on rice paper, of course, and now I love the way this project turns out. It's so funny because it's really just an afterthought. Like I said, I've had this box around forever, but I'm fixing to take this to the library because we are doing a fine art project at the library for the first time in a couple months, and this is what I'm going to take my pencils in for everybody to use, and my blending stumps and all the stuff that we use for pencil drawings. And so I want it to be decorated, and I want it to be, I want the girls to be inspired to create beautiful artwork. So this is what I'm going to take my pencils in. Super excited about that. I'm going to talk more about that in an upcoming video. about the library class and what we're going to do that particular time and who's sponsoring us. That's going to be a big deal. Now I've taken this dictionary that I bought from the bins, and I'm going to use those letters to make words on my box, and it's one of my favorite things, and it's just so simple, so like no special materials needed, really. This dictionary was $1.39 at the bins. Everything here came from the bins. I did not buy anything special for this project by any means. I'm just using Mod Podge again to stick my letters down to that box, and just so you know, it's important for you to know this, that I came in with my background color paint and painted around all those letters so that my box didn't look like a ransom note, because that would not be pretty for me. That would not be good. That would really mess with my OCD. So, and I do add the word create on the other side, but I don't show myself doing that. But there you go. I love the way this turned out. I think it's the most simple materials. You can see I also use dictionary pages to cover the sides of my box. This is about the end of our video. Stick around to the very, very end so you can see how everything turned out. And you know, if you liked what you saw, like, share, comment, subscribe. All of those things are going to help me be more successful on YouTube, and I really appreciate your help towards that end. Thanks so much. See y'all next time.